I cannot believe that we finally are at the close of share, but I have one of the best, in my humble opinion. Okay, here we go. Now, listen, I've always said that we only have a certain amount of time, and but today is like probably the best day ever because we have with us you, Lionel Dyke. In my humble opinion, one of the best documentarians because I see, and I know you do more than that, but I see everything that you write on IBM.com. I see all of the blog posts. I see how you go so deep down into the trenches and answer questions and do magic. I see you on Slack, and I just want to say thank you for all of your contributions because if it wasn't for you, a lot of folks would not be where they are today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got you fooled, I see.
Stop it. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about you, young lady?
I am doing excellent. We just finished the bucket session, and it was excellent. It was my very first time going, very first time attending. A tradition at Share, and a wholesome tradition that should not be broken. Can we start there? And I don't even want to. We want to start there, but since it's so fresh, and then we'll get into who you are.
Okay, the Bit Bucket,
Yes.
it started in 1990 with Carl Jung and Bob Shannon as a session that was the last one of the week where they would pick up tidbits from other sessions during the week that they felt needed to be highlighted. People needed to remember them, or they maybe didn't get enough emphasis during the normal session.
Mm.
And they would spend 5, 10, 15 minutes on different topics throughout the course of the Bitbucket session, which lasts an hour.
Okay.
And they did it for the first time. It was well received. And then they continued doing it. And I've been a participant in Bitbucket now for 2 years, maybe.
Wow.
So that's 4 different years
Right.
where I've presented something. It's gotten away from topics that were raised during the week in other sessions to short sessions, like short topics
Right.
that weren't enough to take a full session at Share, and Share doesn't have a short topics session other than Bitbucket.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it is now.
I love that. And it's wonderful how you all just facilitated the time and the space to let folks be able to do that. I think that that's wonderful. It's really nice. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, now, now that we've cleared our palates, can you please tell us more about you, Lionel?
Where do I start?
Well, I want to know, like, how did you how did you get started in technology?
Okay, back in 72,
Okay.
so the latter part of the last century of the last millennium, um, I heard about a job at a company called Prudential Insurance, and they were in downtown LA, and they had different entry level jobs. And I was thinking I'd like to get into accounting. My father was a CPA. So I and a few other friends went to Prudential Insurance on Wilshire Boulevard. They're not there anymore.
Mm.
Um, that building is, it's now the LA Art Museum, and it's on the grounds where the LA Tar Pit is.
Okay.
And I applied for a job there and mentioned accounting. And they came back and said, how about data processing? That's what they
Okay.
called IT at the time, data
Yeah.
processing. I said, okay, what's that? You'll be working with computers. What's a computer? So I'm game. So I hired in as a JCL clerk. JCL is job control language. It's what's used on card decks to run batch jobs.
Hmm.
And I would maintain card decks for different production systems.
Okay.
And my job was during the week to make sure that the card decks got into the computer room so the jobs could be run, pick up the decks when they were after they were submitted, change different criteria on the cards, like a weekly cycle, a monthly cycle, different things like that. So I was going through the cards and creating a new card with the changed field and putting it back in the deck. Computer, it was fascinating. I was learning a lot. Saw that my hometown, Long Beach, which was where I was living at the time, Long Beach City College had courses in computers. So I signed up
Wow.
for one in Fortran,
Mm-hmm.
my first computer class, programming class. I wrote a program before I even finished the class to take that card deck that I had and update those fields for me automatically. So instead of taking a week, there were 3 of us doing it throughout the course of a week. It was all done in 15 minutes for all 3 of us.
Wow.
I got an award from Prudential of 3 weeks' salary. Was the bonus I got for writing that program.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, that's what it was. And the other 2 ladies moved on to doing stuff in the application area. And I was reassigned, and was a very junior, very junior system programmer. I taught JCL to some of the folks on operations and application folks, so I had to learn JCL even more.
Wow.
And then I took a class in assembler programming.
You jumped from JCL to assembler.
Well, first I went from JCL to Fortran.
Fortran.
Okay, and that was the last thing I did ever with Fortran, but it taught me programming.
Yeah.
And then I went into assembler language.
Yeah.
Because that's what you need as a system programmer, because everything was done in assembler. And that worked with the senior system programmer.
Yeah.
Actually, he probably was the only system programmer we had at the time on doing sysgens and whatnot. We would Friday afternoon, when work completed, because it was all batch processing at the time, so we didn't really have onlines, so we could shut the computer down at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. And we took it and we started doing our sysgens. We would run the card decks through to do the sysgen, get them started, and we would go down to the corner bakery, have dinner, come back in a few hours, and the card decks for the stage 2, or stage 1, I guess at the time, was punching out. We would take that, do some work with it, put it back in for stage 2, and it would keep going. And eventually, by the time Saturday morning breakfast came around, stage 2 was almost done. We'd do a little bit more work. Basically, it was the whole weekend. We would spend, and we'd have the new system up, all fully jammed and everything by Monday morning, 7 a.m. Then we'd go home.
Just like that.
Yeah, that's the way you did things back in the early mid 70s with MPT. It took a long time to do things.
But you learned so much.
Yeah.
And you've pulled all of that knowledge from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s to today.
Yes. My mentor, the system programmer, whenever I would have a question, whether it was JCL when I was just starting, or a sysgen, or using one of the utilities, or the operator console, whatever, I would ask him a question, and he would ask, "Have you looked it up yet?" No. He would point me to a bookshelf. It was like 4 shelves high.
Oh boy.
Maybe 3 or 4 feet wide, with all the IBM publications. And occasionally he would tell me which shelf to start on. So I learned to look things up.
Right. And so you all had that in the office.
Yes.
So it was right there, right for you. Your mentor was right there directing you on what to do. What advice would you give? Because just hearing that little piece, if we can just, and I think I will, just soundbite that and just put it out into the internet. What advice would you give to those that are up and coming to finding their mentor? Because that little piece was just gold.
find your that's it's the luck of the draw on finding a mentor.
Because they're not going to be sitting in the office telling you where the book is.
No, and I'm not sure he thought of himself as a mentor at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But find somebody who is willing to let you ask the dumb questions, because you may think it's dumb, he may think it's dumb, or she may think it's dumb.
Sure.
But if you don't ask, you're not going to get an answer, and you won't learn. And if they tell you, have you looked it up, or go, or point you to the bookshelf, well, point you to Google or wherever.
Right.
I think one of the most important things that I learned from that was not that I needed to go look something up, but I learned how to find the answer. Okay, you may not, probably will never know all the answers. Okay, but if you know how to do the research, how to find the answer, and yes, there's Google, there's now 𝗏𝗏𝗃, Gemini, pick your
poison.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But there was an expression from Ronald Reagan when he was president: trust but verify. You can ask chatbot, you can ask Slack, you can ask whatever, how do you do something? And you'll get an answer. It may not be the right one. It may lead you down the garden path. Okay, so always test it.
Right.
Don't go to your production system and enter the command that you just got out of 𝗏𝗏𝗃. Okay, have a sandbox. Or better yet, after you've got it, go to the IBM manual or the vendor manual and read up on the command. You now know what the command syntax looks like because you were given it by the AI.
Sure.
Okay. But now read up on it so you understand what it's doing. Some of the AIs, they'll try to give you an explanation, but they don't always speak mainframe.
Right.
They'll give you an explanation of, well, this is how it works in Linux, or it works over here, but they don't relate it back to the z/OS environment or ZVM or the whatever, the mainframe infrastructure. So you should always read up on it so that you know this parameter -I, for example, may mean one thing when you're using it on Unix on your distributed box, but you go to OMVS through the shell interface, it looks the same as your distributed box because it looks like Unix and it's running the same shell, bash perhaps, but the -I for that command may mean something different because sometimes the ports, when they port a command, meaning they convert the command to from running on a distributed Linux to running in OMVS, they may have reused that -I as something else. Now, there's the z/OS Open Tools project that's trying to remedy that, if you will, by taking the actual open source tool and doing a clean port to z/OS. But years ago, remember, MVS, the Unix environment within OMVS was started in OMVS back in 1980s, late 80s, early 90s. The Copen edition came out in early 90s. That's a Unix environment. But whoever did the tools, CP, LS, grep, one of those, they took the source of whatever and they created them for the Z environment, but they added or changed some of the syntax to be more consistent with the Z, but that may have changed the way it works in distributed. So that they're not always compatible.
Gotcha. I see. So when folks come on, right, and not everyone is going to have the same path.
Right.
You definitely didn't have like the straight and narrow path. You went to work first.
Yes.
And then you went to school. And while you were still working, you had a mentor. What do you say about folks coming in non-traditional in their path?
I have no problem with it. I think I don't see anyone. I've got a BS in management.
Mhm.
And maybe it's appropriate, the BS.
Stop it.
Okay. Okay, but I did that at night school and whatnot
Yeah.
it took me 8, 9 years to go through
Yeah.
all the way. Uh, I've used that much, zero, that I
Mhm.
can think of from that education. Okay, yeah, I learned how to study, but
Mhm.
I knew that beforehand. Uh, I got the degree because I wanted to get a new job,
Mhm.
and the job required a bachelor's degree, a
Sure.
4-year degree.
Mhm.
Didn't make a difference what the degree was in. They didn't care, just so you had one.
Right.
I don't think the degree is that critical. I think your willingness to study, your willingness to dig in and learn,
Mhm.
and your tenacity at solving problems.
Mm.
Because most of our job in IT is solving problems,
Yeah.
whether it's uh, designing a new architecture, new infrastructure, designing a new program, fixing a problem in a program, okay, or adding a new feature or function. That we're solving problems, so we have to know how to solve problems,
Mhm.
and we
Mhm.
have to be tenacious at it. Because the first time you do it, probably not going to be right. Okay, so you're going to have to go back in and do it again and check it, and be diligent in checking your code and checking the process or checking the design,
Mhm.
and not to be afraid to say, hey, Letitia, can you take a look at my code? Or
Right.
can you take a look at my proposal or my document? Just tell me if it makes sense. When I write something, I'll give it to someone for review, and I'll tell them if it comes back with more white than white and black on the page, I don't mind. And
Mhm.
that's a reference to years ago when you would have things printed on paper, your
Mhm.
typewriter, okay, white paper, black type, and they would take a red pen,
Yeah.
okay. You don't have that nowadays. It's some kind of a Word document or word processor, and you do review, and you can highlight, you can do all kinds of different things and make notes.
Right.
Uh, but the concept is still there.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid if someone takes your initial proposal or idea and says, forget it. You're headed off in the wrong direction.
Mhm.
Ask them why,
Why?
and ask them for creative suggestions. Okay,
Mm.
don't just tell me it's full of something. Okay,
Jelly beans?
huh?
Is it full of jelly beans? Is that what it?
Yeah, something
Yeah,
like
something like
that.
that.
Yeah, but point me in the right direction, or tell me what you think is wrong. Okay, negative criticism, if all it is negative, is not helpful.
Yeah.
It has to be positive and edifying to help build you up and help you improve. I mean,
Mhm.
I can look at something and say, I really like the general idea, but I don't like the implementation
Mhm.
because of this, this, and this. So if I tell someone, these are the three things that bother me about it, then you've got three things to look at to see what can be changed, what's wrong with it. But if you say, I just don't like it, okay, well, I've got a 10-page document here. You don't like it. What's not to like? Where
Right.
do I start?
Mhm.
Okay, so that falls on two people.
Mhm.
Okay, so the person who write it, you have to be willing to ask those questions. Tell me more. Drill down. Ask, what is it you don't like about this?
Right. Right. That's really good advice, and some really good points that you bring out. I like the drill down part because sometimes people just look at things and they're like, "Oh, okay, well, it's just not good."
Uh-huh. Right.
What part? What part is just not good? What is it?
Yes.
Right.
Hmm.
So that's really nice. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. And if you're going to write up something, and it's
Hmm.
always probably a good idea to write up your idea so that you've got something in place. Someone once told me years ago, before you write a line of code, document it so you know what you're writing to. And someone told me, again, this is probably in the last millennium, when you're writing a document,
Hmm.
put the bottom line up front, BLUF, bluff. Keep it an executive summary, a short summary at the beginning. Okay, you always have a summary at the end of a document.
Hmm.
So it's like you tell them what you're going to tell them, you tell
Hmm.
them what you want to tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. You repeat it three times, but bottom line up front, and you get the summary at the end encapsulates that.
Right. Right. So with documentation, how did you even start writing the documentation? Because yours is just like, it looks like poetry when you start reading it. It really, really does. How did you even start doing that?
When I've developed a lot of open source tools, as you've probably seen.
Yeah.
And some of the tools became very popular, and I realized I needed to document them because I was getting a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So I would start writing using something called DCF, the Document Composition Facility. It's tag language. This was before word processors.
Wow.
Okay. And I needed to put stuff down so people have documentation on how to do things. And I write the way I talk. And
Okay.
and then I have to go back and I clean it up a little bit and neaten things up. But that's kind of how I do it. I'm more conversational. I like to add humor a little bit in to when I write. And I've also written a lot of articles summarizing some of these tools and a few other things for some trade publications, the Tech Support magazine, um, different ones. They're like the blogs that are out there today.
Right. Right. So with that, you have like the answers and the question and answer type blogs that you contribute to. Can you
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit?
When I go out onto the open discussion boards and blogs where people are, they're not really blogs per se, they're more open discussions. People are doing Q&A kind of thing. People ask questions. I will write up an answer if I know the answer. And sometimes I'm interested in that. I don't know the answer. I'll go research it because I want to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'll write that up, and I try to make it simple enough that someone who doesn't have the years of experience, like me, or doesn't have the experience in that particular area, can understand.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times it's for my own purpose. Okay, I've got my own wiki. I've got different files where I keep notes on how to do things. I'm not going to remember. That's one of the reasons I did a lot of open source ISPF dialogues, because I don't remember all the commands, all the different utilities, syntax, and so forth. But if I have a menu that can take me to them and help me find them, and then the menu that prompts me through how to use the different syntax and run the thing, that's just as good.
Right.
In fact, it's better because now I know I can always go to this place, this panel, find the program, find the prompt for the syntax, execute it, review it, and I have an ISPF tutorial that I wrote that goes with it that helps if people have a question. They hit the F1 in ISPF, which brings up the tutorial and gives them a little bit of explanation.
That's not bad. You just have it all covered. I've seen some of your stuff, and I'm just like, how does one get to this part of the program to where you can just rattle it off, but your career started in the 70s, and all of it is just on the inside, but you've done such a good job of putting it on the outside and on paper.
Well,
right?
Yes. When I create these tools, a lot of the tools I created were when I had to do something more than once or twice,
Yeah.
or when I got questions more than a few times from people. I would create these tools, and they needed to know the documentation, how to use them. Because when I was the different companies I've had, there may be 50 or 100 or 1,000 different users out there that may have a need to use the tool, and they have to have access to the documentation, at least some short document to tell them it's there, if nothing else.
Right. Right. So with what you do now, can we talk about we know that you learned the assembler, you got on your project teams. How did you navigate your career to what you do now?
Sure chance.
Absolutely not. I'm not going to take that.
It's all I can say is it's God's providence on how I got to where I am today from where I was.
Mhm.
Each job I've had, one company that I was at, they went through, I want to guess half a dozen different layoffs during the time I was there. And I
Really?
was hit each time, and each time I found a new position in within the
Within
company.
the company?
Yeah, so I was able to continue there.
Okay.
Not always in the same role,
Mhm.
and then they outsourced, and was transferred with the outsourcer,
Oh, wow.
um, doing something that was a subset of what I was doing at the main company. But again, I had to document stuff, I had to do stuff, so that was fine. I then I didn't like being in the outsourcing business.
Mhm.
Um, I left that, moved someplace else, and after a year, 12, 13, 14 months, something like that, I got caught in another layoff.
Mm.
But I was able to find a new job as an architect, doing designing and architecting a product, software product. That's what I like doing.
Mhm.
Never
You're
been
good
in
at
that role.
that.
Hadn't been in that role officially. All the tools I developed, so forth, but never a formal business product.
Mhm.
And that's got me there where I was documenting a replacement for a product that we had. And that went very well up until the point where they did a reorg and was out. Yeah. I then spent a year and a half or so. Um, I couldn't find any job that I really wanted because they all required moving. We just built
Mm.
a house.
Right.
And after having moved to the new location, to Austin, um, so during that time, I used some savings and and I purchased some line haul trucks, 18-wheelers, and contracted with
Wow.
FedEx, and I ran a small business with these line haul trucks.
Are you kidding?
No,
Was it fun? You weren't
no,
driving, were you?
no, I was not driving.
Okay.
No, but I had to do payroll and all that other
Yeah,
stuff.
sure.
And FedEx every week would send a file that had, okay, here's each truck, here's how many miles they drove, here's the reimbursements, here's all the different specs. And from that, I needed to create payroll. So I learned VBA, Visual Basic,
Mhm.
under Excel, and I could take that sheet from FedEx, run it through Excel, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and I had my payroll and all my reporting.
Love that.
Um, so I was still programming.
Right, right.
And then while I was still doing that, I got a call from a headhunter. I'm not even sure how he found me. Was looking for a 𝗧𝗶𝘀𝗵 to contract at a government agency in Austin. And I thought, I can do that. I've got a manager I've hired who basically runs the trucking business. All I have to do is do the payroll.
Mhm. And so you were doing that in your free time?
So I did that until I wound up selling the trucking business, which turned out to be a pretty good timing because of the way things changed with Amazon deliveries, Amazon doing their own trucking. And
Mhm.
so I got out of the trucking business, and um, same time I sold it, I wound up getting hired by 𝗧𝗶𝘁𝗵 at the company he was at the time
Oh, wow.
to do user interface development, ISPF, for their products.
Right. Wow.
And what I've had, it's been a blessing since day one, in that every manager I've worked for, every company, has been supportive of share.
Mhm.
So I've been able to started going to my first share in '78, and then regularly in from '81 until I got outsourced. I was going to share every share.
Mhm.
Ran for the board a couple times, didn't win it, but
Really?
uh, had lots of great fun here at Share.
Yeah. You just your career is just amazing, and folks, I think, are really gonna glean a lot from hearing it from the horse's mouth, as they say.
Better
We're
than
we're
the
both
mouth.
yeah, we're both Texans, so, that hits home.
Yeah.
Um, I I just I really want to just kind of drive in the nail there on the skills, because you picked up skills that, like, we would just wish that we could get.
Well, the way I picked up the skills were I first started writing interactive tools when
Mhm.
ISPF came out, using a C-list programming language under MVS.
Really?
Yeah, C-lists.
Wow.
And
Okay.
and then Rex wasn't available on MVS at that time.
Okay.
When Rex became available, C-lists were history as far as I was concerned.
Okay.
Okay, I started writing in Rex,
Mhm.
and I taught myself Rex. And the way I learned both C-list and Rex, same way I learned assembler for that matter, or Fortran, is I had a project I wanted,
Mhm.
and I had a programming language I was going to use. Right, wrong, or indifferent, decided I'm going to do this in Rex. So I needed to learn how to use the different Rex functions, syntax, you name it, to get from here to here.
Mhm.
And trial and error, or as a friend of mine used to say, trial by terror, um, you go through it, and it's an iterative process, but you learn it.
Mhm.
I didn't have classes in C-list or Rex.
Right.
Okay, I didn't have books really other than the IBM reference manuals.
Mhm.
But I had a need to do something.
Right.
Same with doing ISPF dialogues. It was open the IBM ISPF manuals and read up on it. But the nice thing is, with the manuals, once you know what you're looking for, you can go look at the source code. IBM ships their panels, their source. Some of the C list is there. But I also learned from the share tape, share mods tape, the LAMVS user group tape,
Mhm.
which all of that's now in the CBT tape. People have contributed their open source code for years,
Mhm.
and you can go look at samples. In some cases, you can use the sample directly. In
Is
many
that
cases,
right?
you can learn enough about how they did something so that you can do what you need to do.
Mhm.
In fact, that kind of reminds me. Share. Remember, we say it's not an acronym. It's what we do.
Right.
When Share started, it was a group of companies in the LA area, most
Mhm.
aerospace companies mostly, that had the high-end IBM computers, the 70 whatever 90s,
Mhm.
whatever 94s. Those computers, when they came out, there wasn't a wealth of ISVs out there selling products. IBM didn't have a lot of software products for it.
Mhm.
So each company had to develop their own. So they came together with the idea of creating tools and creating things, for best practices, procedures, you name it, for how best to do things. And they shared that among themselves. And that's how Share started. So Share, in a way, started out as an organization to share open source software, because all the software they did was open source. They shared it with everyone.
Wow. Wow.
And we're not doing that anymore uh, as an organization, but we still share concepts and ideas. I wish we had more um, customer speakers sharing user experience sessions.
User experiences.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and whatnot. Instead, we get a lot more. We have a lot of vendors, and there's nothing wrong with vendors presenting.
Yeah.
Um, as long as sometimes they veer a little too far into the sales arena, marketing arena, which they shouldn't at Share, because Share is not supposed to be used as a marketing organization. But the user experience, they tell you, here's how I did something,
Mhm.
and here's
Mhm.
what to look out for.
Or this isn't what's not working for us,
Yeah,
but this is what we found that is working for us. I think that would be really beneficial for a lot of folks,
yeah.
in my humble opinion.
We used to have sessions at Share called free for alls. The MVS free for all used to be, when we were 5,000-6,000 attendees, you can have 1,200-1,500 people in a banquet room.
Mhm.
Chairs all over the place, standing room only. People talking about, raising questions. I have a problem here. How
Mm.
do you guys do this? What do you think the best way to do this is?
Oh, that's
And
brilliant.
you would raise the question, and someone else would stand up and answer. It wasn't all the people moderating it. It was anyone in the room. You've got that kind of with IBM Main or what's that? Stack Overflow. Okay. And with now the System Z Discord, where people can ask those questions. It's not quite the same thing, but it's the best we've got right now. And I would encourage people, find out about IBM Main, find out about System Z Discord. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Say it again.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
Yes. But do it in such a way that shows that you're not asking the question without having done a little research on your own. That will upset people, because the idea is
they turn on you quick too.
there are a few individuals that they will detect that and shut you down right away. Stack Overflow is famous for that. If you haven't researched it, okay, and your question is that obvious that you haven't, your question is blocked, deleted. Do a little bit of research, if nothing else, before you ask the question. But don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to try. I'll give you an example. I wanted to do something with PACS because a coworker was trying to use PACS to copy a file system, copy a set of directories from one file system to another file system. Instead of getting onto OMVS on the mainframe to do it, on my laptop, boot up Windows, bring up Windows Subsystem for Linux, WSL, where I have Ubuntu installed, Linux, and I played around with the PACS command. Okay, I'm not hurting anybody. It's on my laptop, my sandbox, and I'm playing around with directories that I just created, so I'm not going to hurt anybody.
Right.
And you can do a lot of stuff that way. Find a safe place to experiment, and don't be afraid to experiment. I'm just thought back to when terminals first came out, when we first started to have interactive terminals. One of the ways that people were taught that it's okay to use the keyboard and touch this before rodents, before mice. Okay.
Rodents.
Yes, rodents. You had a keyboard, you had function keys, and you had this green screen. People created some games. And you used arrow keys or used letter keys to do up, down, right, left, whatnot. And they let them play games for a little bit to see, hey, oh, I shouldn't have hit that key. That's the wrong key. Well, it didn't break anything? No. Okay, did the game break? Well, okay, maybe you didn't win, but you were able to restart. It doesn't hurt when you make a mistake.
Right.
So don't be afraid. Try things, and you'll learn.
That's all. That's how you learn. You got to break it sometimes. In my case, a lot. But it's a learning process.
Yeah,
right?
And when you break something, you have to fix it.
That's right.
And you're going to learn more that way than if it worked out of the box.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. I like that a lot. What's some of your favorite learning resources?
Oh boy. In a way, it depends on what it is. For example, I just gave a presentation on the DSFS commands. I learned about those first time. I can't remember if it was Share New Orleans or Share Atlanta, probably Share Atlanta with the 𝗧𝗶𝘀𝗵, when Kershaw gave a presentation, and it was standing room only about DSFS. There's no way I was going to be able to use it or play with it because the installation I work at didn't have that installed. We didn't have 2.5. We didn't have DSFS installed. Same by the time New Orleans came around. But when New Orleans came around, I did have access to a system that had DSFS. So I thought, okay. So that's when I pulled out his presentation again, the share presentation, which from the share proceedings. I walked through it again, and got an idea on it. Then I logged on to the LPAR that had DSFS enabled and found out it wasn't. So I pulled out the DSFS, admin guide
Mm-hmm.
and saw the installation configuration and read through that, made some notes, highlighted using a PDF reader where you can highlight things, right? Because you don't print it and use a highlighter pen anymore.
And you used your rodent to do that.
Yes, exactly. And made some notes, and then I went and I enabled DSFS, and then I started to play with it.
Yeah. Wow.
So I found, finding the resources. In this case, it was all the IBM stuff. It was chair, presentations, IBM manual, and of course, there's the man pages for the commands, which you have with the Unix environment.
Right.
And that's something else. When I was contracted for the government agency, one of the things they did is they assigned me to support Open OMVS,
Okay.
which I knew how to spell. I'd played around with Linux for a couple of decades off and on, so I had a feel for it from the user side of what Linux and OMVS would be like. But I was nowhere near a sysadmin.
Okay.
But I knew about man pages. I said, okay, I'm responsible for this. I need to know how to find documentation on things.
Right.
In other words, the man page was where I wanted to start looking. So I read up on how to use the man command and wrote an ISPF dialog, OMVS man. So with ISPF, I can look at all the man pages and search it and find the command I want, and read the man page, and that's out there now.
And so now you've got that. And then tell me, when folks finally get up to speed, or that's so hard to say, when folks are trying to get up to speed and they get into production, they find the mentor. What's the next thing that they should do?
They need to decide what they want to be doing.
That's it.
And realize that what they want to be doing may not be what they can do where they're currently at. Okay. But at the same time, there are opportunities where they're at. You can, it's may take a little bit, but you can adjust your current job to be what you want it to be, or to help move you into the role that you want to. If you're doing maintenance type work, maintaining the operating system, okay, and you'd rather be in performance, well, learn about what does it take to be a performance analyst on z/OS on the mainframe. What tools are installed? Go talk to the performance people.
Right.
And just get an idea from them on what they're doing. And when you have some spare time, see if you can spend it with them. Experiment. A lot of those performance monitoring tools, they're just monitors. So you can bring them up and you can look at them. You may need to get special permission to gain access. You may not.
Right.
But you can read up on it. Look, and if you want to do maintenance and you're doing performance stuff, go talk to the person who's installing z/OS, who's installing maintenance, who's ordering maintenance, who's configuring the systems. Talk to the people who are doing the job that you would like to be doing.
And kind of shadow a little bit on your free time and learn a little bit of what they're doing.
Yes.
So you can get up to speed there too.
Exactly.
Kind of like your mini cross-training program, if you will.
Yeah. Show an interest. Realize that there may not be an opening over there, but you're learning it.
That's right.
And in the process of learning what they're doing, you may find that you're learning enough to improve your current job, what you're working on. Maybe, let's say you're doing maintenance, system maintenance configuration, and you talk to the performance folks because you think, I'd really like to be a performance analyst. Well, you'll learn some stuff about how the system performs and how to tune. And you say, I can make this change in the configuration, which I'm currently responsible for, that will improve the overall system performance.
Right.
Now you've seen the best of both worlds, and you're able to implement something from performance into what you're currently doing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that'll ignite a fire, and you'll say, "What else can I do to improve the configuration?"
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. Those are words to live by, and I think that a lot of the people that are in the audience uh, will be able to really glean what you just said and put that in their haystack, because I think that that's a big deal when it comes down to being young within your career and in production, because sometimes those training opportunities aren't always there,
Right.
you know. um, but you have to kind of create your opportunity. So that's evergreen for me. So I'm not going to take up like a ton of your time, but I do want to get this one last thing in.
Okay.
What's next
What's next?
for you?
Well, I've got a great project I'm working on at work where I'm taking an ISPF dialogue, which our product uses,
Yeah.
and webifying it.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's what
Can you
that's
talk about this or no?
yeah. What we're doing is we're taking we're taking the product, the ISPF dialogues, and it's about 50%, little less than 50% completed as far as the migration is concerned. We're using a product from another vendor that provides a web server
Mm-hmm.
that allows us to run Rex and ISPF scripts to drive the web. So we don't have to do a lot of work. In fact, most of what I'm doing is taking the existing Rex exec that drives the ISPF interface,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm making it bimodal. By that I mean whenever it goes off to display an ISPF panel, I have it go over here and display a web page.
Yeah.
Nice and simple. I don't have to write JavaScript. I don't have to do uh, Python, Perl. I don't have to do anything fancy. I've got Rex. I've got access to all my ISPF services. The other thing I have to do is have to redesign it a little bit because the web is stateless.
Wow. So
Okay.
there's a little match. There's just a little bit of
Well, you have to remember,
secret sauce in there.
yeah, you have to keep enough information around so when the user sees the web page, make changes and hits enter or submit or whatever the process
Yeah.
is to submit that web page, you know where you were in the
Right.
process so you can pick up.
Right.
Whereas with an ISPF dialog, you just know you're there because you displayed the web page and you're waiting for someone to hit enter on that you displayed the ISPF panel
Right.
and you're waiting for the user to hit enter on the ISPF panel, and you're not going anywhere. You come back from the panel right in the line of code where you want to be after the panel's displayed. Web page doesn't work that way. I've got to pass information to say, this is where I was, this is where I need to be after the user submits the web page.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, in some cases, it's been trivial to convert the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, it's been very challenging because you've got nested tables and data here and there that with ISPF tables, it's a piece of cake. It's all there. But because of the stateless environment, you have to re-architect a little bit. But that's the direction we're going. And that's fun. And I think as long as I'm having fun, I'm going to be around.
Building worlds.
Yeah. And I'm also very, I still like doing the open source stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's with it. Even if I tell my wife even if I retire, when I retire, not if, but when, I will probably continue doing open source tooling because I enjoy that, and it's always different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have a new bug on open source where I want to take and make the shell user experience more user friendly.
You just sound busy. It's very, very busy.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
And then one of my side hobbies, if you will, is there's several different authors, sci-fi books and mystery novels and authors that I proofread their books for them before they publish.
Are you kidding?
No, I do it for they're authors. I found the books
Yeah.
and I was reading them and I found typos. And being the shy, bashful person that I am, I made some notes on, okay, in this page I found this and this and this, and I sent it off to them and said, I don't know if you're interested, but I found these typos in this edition of your book.
Wow. But
Yeah,
they appreciate that, right?
yeah,
I would think so.
uh-huh.
Who wants to put their book out and not have it? Well, who does that anyway? And it's not fully proofed, right?
Well,
It's an investment.
a lot of these authors, they self-publish.
True.
Okay, so they don't have a publishing firm that with editors and so forth that are going to
Mhm.
check things out. So they'll use tools in Microsoft Word for Grammarly added and
Mhm.
things like that. One of them that I really like, it's a sci-fi author. I'll find continuity
Yes.
because I've read all 50 some out of his books, and I'll say,
Mhm.
hey, I don't remember specifically which book, but your hero way back when did this, and now you're saying that he did something else,
Mhm.
and he'll make that change before publishing.
I love that. I love that because the one thing that you know how much I love sci-fi.
Mhm.
The one thing that I absolutely despise is when a character does not have character
Uh-huh.
continuity. That bothers me
Yeah.
in such a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though we know it's not real.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
even like wardrobe,
Yeah.
that bothers me.
Yes. Yeah. Me too. You know, it's little details.
It's the details or when they change the hair color or anything, or the syntax, how they speak.
Uh-huh.
Um, anyway.
So that's a little aside.
That's a little aside. But yeah, I love that. And I knew we had a whole bunch in common, but I didn't know it went that deep. That's wonderful. I know that you have kitties, uh, and I hope that they're doing well as well as your wife. And thank you so much, Lionel, for coming and spending time with me and with the audience today here at Share. You have been very busy this whole week. We all have, but I know that you've been getting around all week. So thank you. Do you have anyone that you'd like to say hi to on the World Wide Web before we
To my
scoot?
bride, hi sweetheart, love you.
Hello. That's wonderful. I'll go ahead and close this out. And I like to thank all of you all for coming and being with us here at Tish Talks Tech and sharing with us our time here at Share. It's been wonderful, and I just could not ask for anything more. You were here with us and spending time with Lionel Dyke and myself, and we are just tickle pink and blue with what is that a destroyer on your shirt?
Yes.
Which one?
I don't remember which one. I haven't. I'd have to look closer. I got picked up this shirt at the Museum of the Pacific in Fredericksburg.
I love it. And you know what? Here I am. Here we go with the details again. I'm like, oh, those are destroyers. Anyway,
And there's aircraft carriers too on
yeah,
there.
aircraft carriers too. Yeah, very very cool shirt. You have to see it in you have to see it in person, y'all. But anyway, we're gonna scoot, and we love you, and have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lionel.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I'll end it.